Hi, this is DarkFox127 and welcome back to another Skyrim Creation Kit tutorial video. In today's video, I'm going to be covering a new system that I came up with some time ago, but I've only really just gotten around to making the video on, which is all about lighting. Now, I have done lighting videos in the past that cover a lot of the issues surrounding flickering and how best to just, set your lights up so that you don't experience too many issues, about the light limits and all of that stuff. But today I want to, like I say, discuss a system that I've come up with, share it with you all. It does involve some scripting, but I hope that a lot of you out there, especially those that tend to create player homes, are going to really find this useful. So before I do get started, I just want to mention something that some people may decide to bring up surrounding lighting, and that is something called the ENB Light. Now, this mod basically says on the page here that it's unlimited shadowed light sources. And in a sense, yes. However, it's not really the answer to the overarching problem that the Skyrim engine has. So just a quick one, if you're not aware, essentially the whole issue that we're trying to dodge here is that Skyrim lights, when there are too many in close proximity overlapping each other, and especially on single meshes, if too many lights are bouncing off a mesh's sort of surface, it tends to cause light flickering. So what that means is you can walk into a cell, everything looks good, and then you start turning in certain directions, and the lights turn black. They just disappear and then appear again. So it's literally flickering. Now, to my knowledge, there's been no real solution to this. However, this mod sort of claims to help with that. It kind of does. What this mod does is it injects light sources into the game, not via the creation kit, but via ENB. So straight away, the restriction here and the requirement is that you need to have an ENB installed in order for this to work. So obviously, that's a bit of an unrealistic requirement for the Skyrim community because not everybody has an ENB, uses ENB. There are other options out there, and they may not even want ENB. Usually the reason why you wouldn't have ENB installed is because of the performance impact that it can have, and especially during these times, at the time of this video at least, a lot of people don't have the high-powered rigs and the high-powered graphics cards to deal with, injecting stuff like that into such an old engine. So ENB Light is more useful for adding additional flare to your mod, additional light sources where otherwise there wouldn't be any. So a candle in a corner, which would be kind of dark and look a bit odd because there's not a direct light coming from the candle, it will add light to that candle. Areas in, say, Dwarven Ruins where you've got those barrels of like green goo, they'll be like glowing green, which just adds to the atmosphere. It's not really a solution to those instances where you're creating a mod and you're putting too many lights in and they're flickering. You're still going to need a way of putting lights together that adequately lights up the cell that you're in. This is not the solution to that, but it is something that you can keep in mind where maybe you'll add a few candles in, and rather than trying to put individual candles with them just to light the table up a bit, you can maybe leave it, save yourself some issues, and then consider this mod. However, my solution here, which we're now going into, is going to be a scripted system that allows you to turn lights on and off. Now, this is something that I've done before, but what this does is it removes the lights from the game entirely because, as I've sort of proven in previous videos and from previous testing, sorry, that flickered then, my bloody screensaver, it's banned my existence. As I've sort of shown previously, lights that are disabled are still interacting with the other lights around them. They're still sort of rendered in a sense. It's a bit weird. So what this system that I've got that I'm going to show you today does is it essentially deletes lights and then allows you to recreate them by turning things on and off. So it kind of leaves the control in the player's hands where they can turn lights on and off, and they can have as many on as they want and as many off as they want. So it's very interactive in game, it's very immersive, and it can help with the light flickering issues. Okay, so here we are in game. I figured I'd go in and demonstrate the new light system before I go into the creation kit and show you how it works and how to set it up for your own mod. So I'm in Morskom Estate here, which is one of my large player homes. And when I rebuilt this mod from the ground up a short while ago, I implemented the light system in here in order to deal with the huge amount of lights that I needed. So I'm just going to toggle God mode because I think I'm carrying a lot of test materials for the mod. So you'll see here we've got a standard light, and the way that this did work previously is that we'd do hit lights. It would enable the one mesh, disable the other. It still does that because you've got to have a change in mesh in this scenario, as the mesh usually has like a bit of a glow to it, which you wouldn't want to see if the candles are not lit, and you also want to get rid of the visible flames. And then what it would do is essentially enable the light, and then when you do this, it would disable the light. What it's actually done this time is it's created a brand new light right where you tell it to. So it'll be an invisible X marker somewhere. And then when we've sort of turned the light off or blown out the candles, what it will do is actively search for the nearest light in a particular list of lights, and it will delete it. So it won't disable it, it will delete it, and it will no longer interact with the lights around it. So what I'm going to do is make sure we light up a number of different candles and sconces, and we're going to see how it reacts. So when you start to enable a lot of light sources, they start to interact with each other, and they start to cause the light flickering, and sort of blotches, shadows appear and disappear as you're looking around. So hopefully it will happen here for us. It's a little hit and miss. It sort of depends on the order in which you enable lights, whether you've got shadow lights on, interfering with non-shadow lights. But we're just going to turn a load of lights on here. We're going to light the forge because that's a big one. We'll probably start to see some flickering somewhere. Not sure if that was it then, or if that was the light enabling. I think that was the light enabling. So we've got a candle down here as well. That might just tip it over the edge. There's not a set number for the limit, but, you know, when you hit a certain amount in close proximity, it tends to start to cause flickering. I get a lot less of it on this side of the house, so I'm actually going to try where I would usually find flickering. And I'm going to get all of these lights down the bottom, all lit, and the oven especially. The oven is one that likes to heavily conflict with the fireplace in the bedroom. So as soon as we enable this, there it is, straight away. You'll see that we move closer to it, or we look left and right, and you're getting this flickering where the light is not remaining active, which is really, really horrible. And then you'd even be enabling this light here, and they'll start interacting with each other in a really bad way. So what this does is it doesn't remove the issue, but what it does mean is that you can basically put the control in the player's hands, where you can say, well, I'm going to bed now, and I don't really need my fireplace on, and I don't really need to be cooking at the oven, so once I'm done with the oven, I'll turn it off. So the bedroom and the kitchen are two places that you don't tend to be in at the same time. So I can... Oh, no, I didn't want to use the oven. I'm going to use the fire poker, turn that off. So what you'll do is you'll essentially knock all these lights off, and you'll go to bed. And when you do go to bed, if you do want the fireplace going at night, that's perfectly fine. And it's not interacting with any other lights because they're not even disabled anymore. They've been deleted. And as you can see, the light flicker has gone away. Now, as I say, with the old system, if you just do a disable of lights, or God forbid you just want all these lights there by default, you're going to have flickering all over the place, and it will completely ruin the experience. But that is the system functioning. As you can see, we've got more clashing here. Morskom Estate was incredibly ambitious and a very tricky cell to keep lit. So what you'd be doing here, we've got a perfect example again. You'll see that that's now gone. We've just died down the display room because you're probably not going to be staring at your treasure when you're sleeping either. That's a good example, but you can die down the number of lights in your mod, and then what you'll tend to find if you've done your lighting really well and not built this to be like a layer, a tiered, really close together ground and first floor, if you've built your mod with lighting in mind, which is usually a good idea, then you'll find that you may only have 1 or 2 locations where you've actually got light flickering, and something like this is just perfect, just to remove that one light that you don't need and still be able to turn it back on later and just interchange between lights. So it is not perfect, but it is certainly better than just having loads of lights everywhere that are always constantly interacting with each other. And it also adds an element of immersion, and it allows you to really change sort of the atmosphere in the place on the fly. So I just turn all this stuff off, go to bed, make the living room dark, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do now is dive into the creation kit. I'm going to show you the script. I'm going to explain the script, how it all works, and then we are going to implement it into a room of sorts and see if it works for us. Okay, so here we are in the creation kit, and what I've done is made a big copy of the inn in Riverwood, Sleeping Giant Inn. So what I'm going to do, this is a terrible idea, by the way. Don't just duplicate cells like this. It's a really bad plan. I wish I hadn't picked something with so many markers in it, but that's fine. We're just going to hide a bunch of this stuff. But what you'll see, you've got a load of candles. Tons of candles in here. And if you were to go ahead and put a light source at every single one of these candles, I guarantee you would see nothing but major flickering all over the place. It would be terrible. So although this is not the best example, like Morskom Estate was, this is going to show you how to set it up and how you can go ahead and just turn lights on and off. So I'm going to choose the candles that we have on the side down here, and I'm going to swap one of them out. So I'm actually just going to flat out delete that one. We're going to have this one here. So let's get rid of that light source. So let's say this light source was a lot smaller in radius, and you've got some dark corners here, and you want to be able to go and turn this candle on and this candle on and any of the other candles and whatnot, and you want the ability to knock them on and off, then this would be a nice situation. Now, if this was ever so slightly lit and lit enough, then this is where the ENB Light mod would be advantageous, at least for the player, where it would just add that little bit of light where that corner was lacking some. But like I say, you couldn't rely solely on this you couldn't solely rely on the ENB Light mod to light your mod up. You couldn't just put all of your meshes down, put no lights in, and then wait for ENB Light to put everything on. It just wouldn't work. Those not using ENB would have a black box that they're sitting in. They'd have a dark room. So the other thing to note about this, if you do start using custom meshes at all, so I've got a custom mesh that I'll be using here for the light being off, which is fine. I'm not sure how ENB Light will react to a source being there and then being removed from the game. I would imagine that the light would just go with it. But I am using the vanilla mesh for the lit version of this light here, which should be perfectly fine. So you'll see I'm using that. So if there was a mod that changes that and makes it compatible for ENB Light, you'd be okay. But that's all I'm going to talk about ENB Light now. We're going to assume that you're not using ENB, you're not looking at that mod, and you just want this candle to be turned on and off so you can control the lights in the area. So I've gone ahead and jumped the gun a little bit, and I've created myself a couple of lights that we can use. So I've made activators, because obviously you're going to need to be able to activate the particular thing that you want to turn on and off. This is a static item, so you wouldn't be able to select it or anything. So what I tend to do is double click on here, go into edit base, I'd select the entire model, do copy. I'm going to go through this quite quickly. I do have other videos where I show how to change out meshes and use resources and things like that. So I'm going to assume that you know how to do some of the basic stuff. But under activator, I've gone under edit, edit again, and then I've gone under meshes, and I've either added my own resource or I've done the version, the on version. This is the off version. I've done the on version, and I've gone ahead and just pasted. I'll show it you. Pasted into there so that I can reuse that vanilla mesh. And then the off version, I've gone ahead and used one of my resources, which you can find on my website, by the way, along with scripts and stuff. use my resource where you can clearly see this is like an off version of the candle. It's not lit at all. There's no flame. There's no glowing or anything like that. So visually, it's going to look right. It's not just going to have the light source disappear and still look like a lit candle. So once I've done that, I've got two activators. I've got an off version, which says activation text for light. So when you hover over it, it's going to light insert name, so light candle. And then I've got the on version of it, which is going to be the opposite. So it's going to say blowout candle. So the activation text is something that you're going to want to change. And then on each of them, I have put on the base objects for the activator, I've put the light switch on there, which is going to have a number of properties that need to be created and filled in. So don't let it be too daunting if you're not into scripting. This has been made relatively modular so that you can basically just fill in the properties that you need. You don't really need to do any script editing here. But for those of you that are interested, this is exactly how the script works. I know there's a lot of people out there that basically like to just take a script and run with it, and they don't care how it works. They just want to use it. That's fine, but I would always suggest that you try and learn how the scripts work, because it is a huge advantage going forward to be able to do scripting, and it is also, it just opens so many more doors for you for cool things. And it lifts a lot of restrictions that you would otherwise have with your mod. So it's surprisingly, you would expect that maybe this was going to be quite the long script, but it really isn't. It's only 73 lines because I've put a lot of commenting in and a lot of spacing. It's incredibly short, it's incredibly simple, and incredibly sweet. It just works. So what we've got here, collection of properties to start us off. We have the light state, so this is used to make sure you can't just spam the hell out of this thing and create like 50 lights without a way of getting rid of them. Although I would expect that the player would just be patient with the thing and not be silly and try and break it. We have the light list, which is a form list filled with lights that you can have it search out for and get rid of. You could just do this as a single form. It doesn't have to be in a list, but a list just lets you dump a number of them in and basically list all of your custom lights and whatnot. You have the light source here. This is the light that it's going to be using, the light that it's going to create. Like I say, a lot of this is tooltips anyway, which is good. You've got the light on, the light off. These are the references. So these are actually the meshes themselves, so that the candle, two candles, an on and off version. And then you've got the light locations. This is going to be an X marker where you want to spawn your new light. And then you've got player ref, pretty standard. And you've got sounds for on and off. Now, I'm not going to bother implementing the sounds because we've sort of seen those working, and it means that we need to drag our own custom sounds in to have a nice little and like nice little candle sounds. So we're not going to bother adding our own, but you can put yours in just to add the sound effects. Otherwise, it's just going to disappear. So on initialize, it's just going to set the state up to inactive, and then it's ready to be activated and do its thing. It's within a state. And then you've got event on activate. So when you activate it, pretty standard event. If you're wondering why I'm looking up, by the way, it's because I've got this up on my second screens. I should probably relax and not do my neck in. But we have essentially an if statement. So it's going to check if it's on or if it's off and what it's got to do in this situation. So if light state equals true, so light state is essentially the ball for ticking it on and off. This decides if this light is lit or if this light is not lit. So if it's the on candle or the off candle. So it basically tells it which part of this script to do. Rather than having a script for one and a script for the other, it's basically going to use one or the other depending on the type of light that it is, if it's emitting light already or not. So that's going to check that, and then it's going to do its thing. So for... hang on, which is this for? So this is find closest reference of any type and then delete it. So this is for turning a light off, and then this is for turning a light on. So if the light is on, you want to turn it off. So for turning it off, all it does is it plays a sound on the player. You could have it play on itself, but in the past I've had issues where it just doesn't want to sound out for some reason. So the safe thing, just to make sure you do hear the sound, is I sometimes just play it on the player. But you can do it whichever way you want. So what it's doing is it's playing a sound. It's then enabling the version of the mesh that is off, so that it doesn't have a glow or anything. It's doing that first over the top for about half a second, as you can see, and it's waiting for half a second and then getting rid of the other. Otherwise, what happens is the light disappears in front of your eyes and then another one appears, and it just ruins the immersion of it. So it just overlays one on temporarily and then gets rid of the other one, and it tends to be quite minimal, the amount of flicker or weirdness that you see. It enables the other one. So it's still doing a mesh swap, but when it gets to the point where you've got the light source itself, rather than disabling it, it will delete it. So this does game.find closest reference of any type in the list. It's a list that we referred to at the location within a radius of 128. You can change the radius if you really wanted to in the script. I probably could have made that modular. I might still do that. I might also make the wait time modular. Just for those downloading it later, so you can tweak those just in the properties, and it just deletes it. So it finds the light, deletes it. And then what it does the other way around is, instead of deleting a light, does all the same things but in reverse, and it just places at me a light source. So it creates a new source of light rather than enabling something that's already there. And that's really the quite a simple trick around it, rather than having to muck about with enabling, disabling, having a load of things in the cell by default. This sort of method can even be used for rugs. I use the same sort of method if you've seen it in my mods like Morskom Estate and anything that's come after it, player home wise, where a rug has been activated and switches over to the next rug. There's a little bit more to it than this, but it's a similar sort of method, but there's more of a script to it, something that I might do a video on going forward, where rather than enable and disable a bunch of rug references, it's doing a much easier thing, where it's checking its position in the form list, and it's just sort of cycling through and doing checks on what it's on and what the next one is and the next one is. And it does like a rug cycle of deleting the rug and then creating a fresh one. It's an interesting method. So that's what I've used for lights, and that seems to get it working. So how do we actually put this together? Excuse me, throat's going. How do we actually put this together in the script? So, not in the script, in the kit. So it's relatively simple. What you want to do, like I say, is put it on the base objects, do autofill, it'll get the player ref out of the way. And then all of this, we're going to want to create a collection of different things. So we have a form list that we're going to need for our lights. So if I go under MISC and form list, alt click and new, and we do df list lights. Okay, just reopen that, just like to confirm it first. Then what you can do, if we are going to use, for example, a candle light with no shadow, default candle light, no shadow, you'll put in the light source that you want it to search out for to delete. That is closest, and it'll be the same one that it creates. So we're going to go with default candle light 01 and leave that in there. So there's our list. We can search up our list, put that in there, fill that in, nice and easy. The light location, we are going to need an X marker, roughly where we think the light needs to be placed. So if I go under static and X marker, then that's roughly where the light's going to be placed. If I want to know exactly where I want to put my light, then what I can do is delete that, and this is a good way of doing it. And if I search for that candle, I can drag and drop. Oh, hang on. Did we do default candle light 01? Because I don't think we want to do that, because I think it will have a shadow. We're going to want the non-shadow version. So let's just change that out. Oh, hang on. It's all right. I was typing. I thought I saw a spider, but I didn't. Okay, so we'll do default candle light 01 NS. That's no shadow, because you don't want loads of shadow lights being created. That would be bad. And then what we want to do is, just to get an idea, put it in the world as if you were going to just drag and drop them in the old-fashioned way, and then see what it looks like. Now, in this instance, this is way, way too bright. So we want to double-click on it, and what you can do is you can change the sort of radius on it. I believe it's in extra. You can do that manually, or you can do it by holding down click and the S key and then just moving your mouse, which is the way you're doing it. Now, what we may want to do is make sure that every single light of this type that we're placing down has a set radius, because it's going to use the default radius that it has. Meaning, one of the reasons that we've got that form list, I know we said we're going to use this light, But now it shows that we don't really want to use this light. We want to edit the base of it, and we want the default radius to not be 256 because that's way too much. So if you put the radius to roughly where you want it, which is about there, I would say, and then you check in the extra data what that is, so it's damn near 100 radius, then what we'll do is we'll go into this light and we will do DF, default candle light 01NS, and we will make one with a radius of 100 instead. And then you can go ahead and find out what you want the fade to be. So let's say I wanted 3 instead. You could tweak the color, all the other settings, and so on and so forth. We're just going to leave it as that. I'm going to do OK. I'm going to create a brand new form of it. And I'm actually going to delete that light just for a second. And then I'm going to re-drag in my new candle. And as you can see, when you drag it in by default now, it's got a much better radius, a much better fade on it. And then I can start to position it. So if I position it roughly where I think it needs to be, then what I'll do is Control and F on it, and I'm going to replace it. And I'm going to untick same base object type. And I'm going to replace it with an X marker, because that will ensure that my X marker is the exact position that I want this to be spawned. So you'll see the position of it is way off from where we suspected it might be. That is where it will spawn it. The light will spawn exactly there and sit exactly where we wanted it to be. So I'm just going to give it a reference. It's a really good idea. So df ref, let's just do light source 01. And then my light location is going to be that X marker. So that's where it's going to spawn it, in that exact place, just like the light, the test light that we put down. And I'm just going to tweak my light list because I changed what the light was. I can't remember if I actually swapped it. No, I didn't. So I've still got default light. So it needs to match the one that I'm going to be spawning. Therefore, it needs to be DF light in there. So I've got my list with my new light that I've made that's got the set radius and fade and other settings that I want. I've got my location where I'd like to spawn exactly. And then we've got light off sound, light on sound. So the sounds we're going to ignore. We want the off and the on versions of the mesh. I'll come back to those in a second. We have the light source, which is going to be the name of the light that we've made that we're using. And then we have our light state. So the light state for this, because the light is off, we would like this. So hang on, is the candle lit? Default is no. So this should be off. Let me just double check the script so that we don't get this wrong. So it needs to check that if it's lit, that it's turning it off. So yeah, that should be correct. That should be false. So we just leave it. Because the default is false, we don't need to fill it in. But the next one, we'll need to tick it to true. So that determines that the activate that we're using is candle off. That's fine. I've just realized that I'm actually editing the base object. So what I'll need to do is probably clear these off, because we want to set the standard settings on here, which is just player ref and then light source. And then you want to be able to reuse this for multiple candles. And then on each of their individual references, that's where you're going to want to fill this in. Now, thinking about it, we can probably stick with the list because the list will be the same. They're all going to use the same candle. They're all going to use the same list of lights. So that's perfectly fine. But the light location and the lights on and off will be different for each reference. So we just want this for the base. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. So what we're going to do, we're going to delete that candle because we don't want that. We want our one. And we are going to want our DF candle off. So put that in place there. That's our off candle. And what we can do is this will be initially enabled, so not disabled. I'm going to duplicate that and I'm going to do a Control and F. It's going to take a little bit of time because it was last looking through all of the references in the game. I'm going to do same as just to speed it up. It's got DF candle on. And they're going to overlap each other in the exact same location. And then I'm going to give them references. So DF ref, because this will make it easier to select what they are. Candle on. And then I will do candle off for my other reference. So I've got candle off here. Managed to select it somehow. And then the on candle needs to be initially disabled. Otherwise, they're both going to be overlapping each other. So that's what we want, as you can see there. Got our off candle first, got our marker there. So you'll see here the base object is going to have the basics that we don't have to fill in each time. And then what's different for each individual source, we're going to set on the reference of it so that this doesn't change the base information. So this is where the light location for this particular light is there. We have light off, so I can try and select it here, but this is going to be a bit iffy. So I'm just going to select something nearby, and then I'm going to type in those references, and the off version is dfref off. The on version, I'll select that tankard again, just makes it easy to get to that cell, and then type df, and we want on for that one. So the sounds, like I say, you might want to set the sounds on the base object because the sound's going to be the same for all the sources. We're not going to bother with the sound right now just because it's too messy. We've got the light source is going to be the same for this one. And then we've got light state, that's fine, and player ref. So really all you'll need to do then for each individual ref, once you've got your base object sorted, is you'll set the location of the light that it spawned, the off and the on references, and make sure that they're both down and they've got a one of them's disabled and one of them isn't. So there we go, that's set up there. Now all we need to do is make sure that the on version has the same setup. So we'll go on, put the same script on it, autofill for the player ref, and then we've got our same light list that we want here. The light location, the off and the on will be different for each reference, so we won't fill them on the base object. We have light on for the sound there, we'll ignore the sound again. Light source is going to be the same, so we'll do df candle light 01 and s. And then this time the ball is going to be ticked for true because this is on, and it will need to do the other part of the function to sort of turn it off rather than turn it on. And we will confirm on there, and then same situation again. So we'll go to this light here and double click onto here, and then we just need to fill in where the light gets spawned, because that's not only the location that light spawned, it's also the location that it will search from. So the closest light is bound to be that light, the light for this particular candle. Otherwise, if it was searching way off out the way, it would be disabling a light for something completely different. Oh, I didn't want to do, yeah, I did. Right there. Sorry, I can't talk now. Light off, and then we'll do df reference candle off, and then we'll do df reference candle on, and then we've got the light source filled. We'd have the sounds done if it was on the base, and again, yeah, there we go. So it's just those three properties. Now the wonder of this, and I'm just going to test it, I'm just going to save first. I'm going to test it before I go ahead and confirm this. You can double tap one, by the way, just to hide things. So I double tap one. Actually, I'm going to do Alt and 1 to show everything. Double tap 1 while I've got the X marker and the light selected. Hold down Control, click on this off version, do Alt and 1 again to show everything, and then as I keep tapping 1, I've got, and you can see in here, I've got reference candle on, and light source. I've got all of those selected, and you can duplicate them. So Control and D, move them along to the next one, the next bench, and in theory, it will tweak the references to put numbers on the end. And what it will do is it will actually point to the duplicated references. So what it means is you don't have to keep putting these down individually. You can get one completely set up how you need it, and then you can select all three parts of it, and you can duplicate it. It's a really, really quick way of just getting all your candles plonked around in your home without having to relink references, and it's a huge time saver. And then if you're quite the picky person like me, you can go around and then start just tweaking and fixing up your references without affecting it. But that's it. That's how you do it. What we will do, just to confirm that this does work, we will go back into the game. We'll go into this DF new inn, which is a copy of Sleeping Giant Inn, and we'll waltz over to here, just behind Delphine, or Delphine's doppelganger, and we will activate that source, make sure that it works, and we'll be able to essentially create and delete the light source on the fly, which should be pretty cool. Okay, here we are in game yet again, and as you can see, this is my candle over here. We have a candle here as well. I'm just going to steal everything off the side because it's in my way. Something else that you might want to make sure of is that when you do put these light sources down, there's not anything in the way making it really fiddly to get to stuff. So I'm just going to steal everything. It's alright. The Delphine doppelganger left because she's technically working off the same packages as the other Delphine, and she's been zapped into oblivion. So, as you come over to it, you'll see light candle. We won't get a sound with it, unfortunately, because we didn't set one, but you can put whatever you want in. And then as you light it, you can see the light source was created. The meshes were swapped, because clearly there's a difference between that mesh and that one. And then we can also blow that candle out, and it's completely deleted. And it really allows you to just control the lighting in the cell without worrying about flickering continuing anyway, which is really neat. And because we're still using the same, we're pointing to the same mesh, at least for the on version, it will be compatible. Unfortunately, if you did an off version of this thing, it wouldn't be compatible without a patch with sort of light mods. But I'm sure there's other ways around that sort of stuff. But in terms of, yeah, just having a script to control the lights on and off, and as you can see, we did a swap out of those. We did a complete duplication. We didn't have to set that up on its own. And it is searching that X marker that's around here, and it is deleting the source. It's finding it. Yeah, that is pretty much about it. And that is just about it for another tutorial video. So I hope you found it useful. Please let me know in the comments section down below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're not already. You can check out the rest of my work over on my website at www.darkfox127.co.uk. If you do find yourself using this system for your mod, please do drop a credit in your mod description down below or somewhere on there. Ideally with a link back to this video would be great, because that means that anybody else looking to use a similar system will know how it was done, and more people can adopt it, because like I say, it doesn't solve it, but it does make it better. So yeah, there we go. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will speak to you all next time.